Okay, great. Hi, everyone. We're going to get started. This is Anna Carvelin with the HMIS team at All Chicago. And actually, it's not the 25th, it is the 26th. So let's get started. I'm going to show this in presentation mode. Great. Okay, cool. So if you did the first webinar, I believe it was November 7th, this will be a lot of repeat information. There will be some new information, but yes, there will be quite a bit of repeat information just in case you missed that first webinar. So I'm going to walk through this transition to HMIS for our matching. So if you're familiar with the process, currently we use Google Forms to request matches and rematches, providers do. And our matching team receives that. And so instead what we're going to do is use HMIS, and I'll get into more of the details. And so instead, our matching team will get an email every day. Okay, so why the switch is basically what we're going to walk through. Why the switch, the timeline, our accomplishments, and what we're anticipating, the how-to, and any questions you guys have. I'll actually walk through some of the highlight FAQ that we had on the first one because people brought up such good questions and it really covered a lot. So I'll actually just go through that, not every single one, but most of it, so that we don't have to repeat those questions today. But no question is a bad question. We just want to cover everything, and also your question helps us refine this process. So currently we're working with PSH providers as the first cohort to get through this, and because of the mostly stable nature of their units, although there's caveats to that as well. So why are we switching? First of all, there was a request for a switch. Providers, especially from what we've heard from the PSH work group, really wanted to make the switch. People didn't like using Google Forms. And so as a organization and as a team of organizations who implements coordinated entry, we decided to respond to that need and that want and to move forward with it. So it's a one-stop shopping for providers. You don't have to go into multiple systems. From our end, it's especially good for the ease of reporting on coordinated entry key time markers like the match request to housed, so we can get a little tighter on that reporting. And then for the future thinking, as we move forward to more integration and more using more efficient systems, we are wanting to increase automation for the matching process. So there will always need to be people behind that process, but we can enhance and increase the automation piece of it. Okay, so the timeline briefly, early 2018, the early discussions were taking place and requests were being made to make this move. If you remember, September 2017 2017 is when coordinated entry was broadly implemented in Chicago, and so it's been an ongoing process of refining and refining and refining. And so this was one piece of it. So this has really been worked on for over almost 2 years now. So then in early 2019, this discussion was renewed. We completed an internal trial with the report So a lot of the work was on the back end. And we completed a trial referral with How, actually. So thanks to Sarah Birchler, who assisted with that. And actually, we had 3 trial organizations, all Chicago House, How, and a Safe Haven. So they all assisted us in refining this process early on, and we learned different things from each of them. But the only one we actually did a full referral with was How. And then, so November, we asked everybody to have their unit lists completed, and so far we're up to about 135 or so projects, and so we at All Chicago have put those into ServicePoint. So thank you all for that. That was a ton of work. January 6th is what we've decided for a final date for permanent supportive housing providers to input clients into their units in HMIS. So this, what originally I had said I was hoping to begin this in December, but it was clear from the feedback we got from especially larger organizations that they would need more time. So that's great. We decided on January 6th for final date to put in people, and then begin the actual process for everybody January 13th, and that is everybody, every PSH provider, our first cohort. And then beyond that, including rapid rehousing and anyone else who receives referrals, we haven't set a date for that, of course, because we want to see how this rolls out. So again, thanks to How, Sarah Birchler, Chicago House Garrett, and a Safe Haven Margarita, we learned a lot, which really was the purpose of that trial piece of it. So a brief overview of the matching process. It is based on unit lists and ShelterPoint. So I know it can be uncomfortable for some PSH providers to use ShelterPoint because they might not have ever used it. I will say a lot of providers are using it for their own purposes with their own lists to track their own people. So for many people, it was not too much of a jump over to using ShelterPoint, but understandably, it's uncomfortable for some people because it seems like ShelterPoint is strictly been created and tailored for shelters, which is generally the case. But we found that it would be useful for this process as well. And so when your units are full, nothing happens. When you remove a client from a unit, that unit shows up on a report and is sent to the match team every day. And then after that, the process is essentially the same in terms of the match that happens. So all the relevant people get an email, and we need providers to update the need status. And then the only difference would be once you enroll a client, you have to put them into a unit. So as of now, like I said, we have 135 unit lists that we've input. I have double checked them. We may need to triple check them for accuracy on our end, but you can let us know if there's any glaring obvious issues, like if there's you can hold a maximum of 4, but we had put 3 or something like that. So you can let us know issues like that. All Chicago put the unit lists in on the back end because even though administratively some people might have the rights to do that from their agency end, it's real detailed in terms of how we put the unit lists in. And so we wanted to make sure to get that right. So your main goal first and foremost right now, if you know that you've sent it to us, is to make sure it's accurate. And I believe I'm up to date on answering everybody's requests for fixing issues. I think there's one email I got today. I can look at that. But so you're just gonna log into ServicePoint, navigate to ShelterPoint, open up your project, choose the CES list. This is really important because just remember, some of your projects may have already had a list before. We're using the CES prefix for the list. And then you view all, and I'll demo that. So if you don't have access to ShelterPoint for some reason, or a CES list, let me know in your PSH projects only. So let me show you that. So you log into ShelterPoint. ServicePoint. Go to ShelterPoint. Make sure you have ShelterPoint over here in this menu over here. And then you should see your agency here. You're gonna search for the correct project. For many of you, it'll just be a list of a few here. Oops. And then pick your project. So same thing. So for me, I have 2 lists. I have to make sure to pick the one that has CES as a prefix. And for all of you all, actually, I didn't name this with the correct nomenclature. It will be CES dash your project number dash 1 or 2 or 3. Just make sure there's a CES in front of it. And then you submit, and then you view all. And so for this project, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 units, not 6, we have 5. We have 1 person in a unit, in one of the units. And so we have 1, 2, 3, 4 empty units. This overflow, it does not exist as far as our reports are concerned, so it will not show up on the report to the matching team. And so we definitely don't want you using this overflow either. If for some reason all of a sudden you have extra funds, and this did happen with one of our trial partners agencies, is that they put in overflow because they had extra funds. Well, what we want to do is increase on the back end the number of units, instead of adding people here, because these won't show up on our reports. So right now, because we have 4 empty units, these empty units will show up on a daily report to the matching team. So the matching team will know that All Chicago CES PSH has 4 openings. So that's why we want to make sure that you all are keeping your unit lists up to date. Okay, so adding your clients. You're gonna navigate to ShelterPoint, we're already in there. You're gonna open your project up, choose the CES list, view all, and then add a client. So let me show you that. So you're gonna go over here to this little check-in button. Click the check-in button, find your client, and then you're welcome to put any notes you want. We're only gonna look at the date. And let's pretend that this client had a child here. The child would also be listed here. And we want to make sure just to keep the head of household checked and not check the child. Because what will end up happening is you also have to assign a unit to the child. And if you only had 1 unit open and you put it for this Nyla Johnson, the child would end up in an overflow unit. So that's only one reason not to include the child. But the main reason is we're only counting heads of households here, just like what we do with coordinated entry. So that's it. You're gonna save and exit. And now you've got your person in here. So now on a daily report, you'll have 1, 2, 3 people, 3 empty units show up for the matching team. Okay, so in order to request a match, you have to remove a client, or if right now your unit list just looks like this, you just wouldn't do anything, because if it stays like this all the way up until January 13th, these units will just show up on the empty report. But let's just say you're ready to request a match. So you find out Nala Johnson is going to be exiting your project on 12/15, December 15th. And so even though we're not exiting her from your project, we're going to exit from the unit because we want to get that matching process started. So this unit exit doesn't correspond to your project exit necessarily. So it's the same process. You just come over here to this little red button now and check out the person. And so the person's gone. Now that that history, that record of that check-in, checkout is going to be in the person's record, and I'll show that to you later. But essentially it's under the shelter stays in the service transactions. And so that whole history is there. Okay, so finally, what we're going to do, let's just say, in order to remove a client without requesting a match, you want to, we put in some fake client IDs into ServicePoint. We put in 10, and we anticipate that will be enough. If we find that it's not enough, we will add more, but hopefully you'll never have 10 units that you're just not accepting referrals for. Essentially, and these are, this list is available to you on the FAQ page, but this is the list of clients that you will use to hold a unit when you're not able to accept a referral. So what that looks like is, in a perfect world, we would be able to put a hold and not have that unit show up on the list. Unfortunately, that wasn't possible for our reports. So what you have to do, and keep in mind, I'm in the training site, so I actually did not put all of these fake clients into the training site. I'm just going to find any fake client. So essentially, what you're going to do is just find the fake client of the IDs that I listed. Okay, there's no actual fake client. There are several clients named fake in the real ServicePoint, so just be sure to not use any of those. So we're just going to pretend that Manny Pohl is one of the 10 fake clients that I input into ServicePoint for a hold. And so now this is our fake client hold. We're just holding that unit so it doesn't show up on the email every day to the matching team. And so the reasons you might do that are if your unit needs to be painted, or for whatever reason you're just not accepting a referral once you, even though it's empty. Okay, so again, I showed you the list of clients that you will use for the fake. Let me make sure, check on the question list. I will get to these later, but again, if you have questions, just go ahead and put them in the question box, the chat box. So yeah, so if we find that 10 is not enough, I just can't imagine it's not, but it's possible. So please let us know, and we'll have to, it won't be too difficult to fix. You just have to let us know if you hit that 10, then we'll have to add another one. So if for some reason you need to edit your unit lists, please let us know if you're losing or gaining a unit. one of the things we found is that it's difficult to delete a unit, and this has something to do with the way we use SQL to sort of mirror the HMIS system and pull the data out of there to have our own system to make reports and things like that. Well, the SQL system isn't reading everything, and so it can't read when we've deleted a unit on the back end, and so it's reading the entire list. We're working on that, and it would be great if we could fix that with our software vendor in the future to make sure that we can just easily delete units. Adding units is really easy. So if you need to add a couple of units because you have extra funds, we can talk about that. One of the things that's come up is expansion units because people did have extra funds. And so we need to probably take that on a case-by-case basis, depending on the longevity of those units and those funds. So I'll walk through some potential hurdles. Okay, I had talked about HMIS enrollment in a project and entry into unit list might not always coincide. So if you anticipate a client exiting and you want to request a referral, be sure to remove the client from the bed a few weeks before exiting them from the project. And so hopefully that won't be a hurdle. I just figured that in general, remembering to upkeep a list, because it might be new for many of you, will be a hurdle, at least in the beginning, until you get the hang of it. Kind of like updating needs statuses or some of the other processes that we put in place that can take a little time to get the hang of it, or like putting the housing move-in date. That took some time for people to get the hang of it, so it just might take a little time. I had already mentioned how overflow, you don't want to do overflow. If you put someone in overflow, it might mean that you should have had your list added to reflect the number of units you actually have. So like I mentioned, the excess funds, we might need to look at this on a case-by-case situation. So like if you had excess funds for 10 units this year, all of a sudden, we'd probably just want to create a brand new unit list for 10 units. Unless you thought these 10 units were going to be with you for the next 2 years. And then also if you added an overflow person, it might mean that you forgot to remove someone from a unit before entering another person onto the list. Overflow units don't show up on the back end in ServicePoint, so it will not show up on our reports. Providers need to be up to date on adding and removing clients to and from the unit list. And ideally, you would start that now, because even though we're not actually starting until, we said January 13th, that Monday, it'd be good if you could put all your people in and then get the hang of taking them out and adding them as you go for the next month, month and a half or so. And then hopefully, you know, if you think, let's just say somebody's leaving January 13th, that Monday, well, you're going to want to remember to take them out around January 1st so that they show up on the match reports. Although I take that back, because our matching team isn't going to get the match reports right away on January 1st. So anyway, but you can get in the good habit of doing it the way we're anticipating it rolling out. So if you attach another person to the unit entry, like I mentioned, and don't assign a unit, they will be put in overflow. So you just want to add the head of household. And skilled assessors will be real familiar with this, doing coordinated entry, because you never want to attach children or partners to the head of household entry to coordinated entry. Providers need to update the need statuses in a timely way, and we need to know when a rematch is requested. Let me show you this. So just as a reminder, we do have an article on the help desk about the referral needs, and there is an explanation of the referral need status. We talk about the policy involved, and we show you the different options along with the explanation. And in fact, just the other day, we added a brand new option. So if you have a situation where your unit just is not available, you just pick unit not available. That's a new one I just added the other day. But just keep in mind, there should be an option that makes sense for you, and there is an other option. So you should always be able to say something about what's happening. If you find that you don't, and if we find that this other is being used a lot with an explanation, that's real common, we'll put another option in. So you can look at this webinar too about the policy for the timeliness standards and the glossary. And I will show you how to do an update, since I do get requests for that quite a bit. Sometimes I know people forget. So you got your email, the client got the referral in the record. Let's hope this guy has something. Nothing. Okay, let's go to service transactions. Okay. There are 0 referrals in the client I had before. So it's similar. What you're going to do is you're going to go to this pencil. You're going to go to your referrals. But for this demo, I'll just show you this. So you're going to go to the pencil and then scroll down to this need status and pick the one that makes sense. Just keep in mind, there's no extra thing that you have to do. You don't need to change the project or this. This will always say coordinated entry project. Just leave that because they're the ones making the referral. So you just leave everything. All you have to do is update this. Okay, so then providers should not edit their own unit list. I said probably some ATAs maybe have, or agency admins have rights to edit their lists. We don't want you guys doing that. Just let us know. Providers adding clients to a pre-existing unit list. We talked about that. So you want to make sure it's just your CES unit list. And then I believe, so again, this is the article. I will be adding to this article, like for example, I'm going to replace this webinar because there is some different information in there. I'm going to replace that one with this current webinar. This is the current timeline that we have set up. So this too doesn't mean like this is sequential and this one's going to be different. It's just a second webinar, pretty much the same information. We'll have an open discussion so that we can get all of your feedback and any questions you might have. That's the 17th. So that should give you plenty of time if you're having, we can troubleshoot, we can talk about any concerns you have during that time. And then we definitely want all of your people added to the unit lists here. And then we're going to begin the matching process here, January 13th. And then we will come back around and regroup and see how it's rolling out in February. Let me walk through a couple of the FAQs that I have not touched on. I did touch on why you would remove a client if you didn't. In what circumstances would you remove a client without requesting a match? So for example, if your unit is being painted, okay, how do you request? You remove it from the unit list. An empty room will prompt a match. how does the matching team know we've already received referrals if the unit is still empty? Do we put the fake hold client in the unit? No, because this is only if the unit's not available. The matching team will know how many matches were made to that type of unit, and so they'll know how many matches can still be made to that type of unit. So you will not use a fake client hold unless you don't have capacity for a client in that unit. Don't use your existing unit list unless you want to and it's useful. Yes, we want PSH providers currently to be using ShelterPoint for this, yes. The question about CHA is still being answered. Right now, we're working that out with the several agencies that this affects. So if I haven't heard from you, which I should have by now, definitely contact me if you have CHA units and you're not sure how to work with those. Will you set up 10 fake clients for each agency? No. These 10 clients will be by everybody, so a client can be entered into multiple projects, just not one project multiple times. How does this affect 2-to-1 rematch? So this policy is still in place and will continue to be carried out. Unfortunately, we can't just upload a bunch of clients into ShelterPoint. We just have to do that one by one. And understandably, this is a task for larger organizations. It's a one-time deal, hopefully, unless down the road your program shrinks significantly, shrinks. We may need to create a new unit list and redo the process, but this should be steady for a long time. What if the program is being defunded? Do we need to change the bed needs? Yeah, you would just contact us about any specific situations like that. But in short, if you are not accepting clients, you would just leave those units full. As people leave, we will either just know to not match to them, or you will have to use the fake clients to update, or you'll be defunded. It'll be a non-operating project anyway. So we'll talk about that. These are the fake clients that you will use. Once we receive an email referral from Catholic Charities, are we supposed to enter the person in the bed while we work on the match? So you would just enter the person once they enroll. Doesn't matter if we enter a client in a bed they weren't requested for. So because we're not designating units by address but by type, this shouldn't be a problem. How quickly will we need to update the need status to prevent getting multiple matches for one empty bed in ShelterPoint? So again, that just please follow your timeline for updating need status. Okay, let me check if there's any questions here that I have not answered. Let's see. Okay, we've got a couple questions. So Kathy from Deborah's Place says, if a client plans to move out on a certain date and the move out falls through, which often happens, how can we put the client back into the unit after a match has been provided? So that is similar to what happens now. Basically, you would just respond in the need status, and then you would just put the client back in. So like if you had a match sent to, and you can, if you want to cover all bases, you would email back the matching team, which is pretty much typically Salistrata. So you would just respond to that referral email you got, let us know, and you would update the need status and you would put the client back in. So as long as you communicate back to us what happened and we do the updating in our system, it should be okay. So how are internal transfers between projects within an agency handled? So that's similar, like that's actually easier. So like if you were transferring a person from one project to another, you would just literally on the day that they move, you would input into one unit, take them out of one unit list and put them into the other unit list. So that's really shouldn't be too tricky. If for some reason you're not accepting a new request for that old unit, you would just put the hold on. This is Jess' reason. Will the unit list in ShelterPoint confuse providers that view shelter stays to support homeless documentation? Additionally, can all providers see the CES unit lists in ShelterPoint? So like if you're a shelter project, you're not going to ever see the CES unit list. So like if you're logged in and you go to ShelterPoint, if for some reason your agency has 10 different project types and one of them is shelter, one of them is PSH, you would just pick your correct project type that you're working on. And then, so if you pick your shelter, you're not going to see the list. You're not going to see the CES list listed to choose. So in terms of like people being confused, I understand that's a concern. I don't know the answer to that right now. I hope as this rolls out for people that do use both, that it'll become more clear. And oftentimes there's only a couple of people that do the matching, and so hopefully it won't be too much overlap, or if there's particular technical assistance or training that's needed for some people, we can do that. So what if we had a unit vacated before this process started and we want to get a match for that empty unit? So until the day we say go ahead and do the old process, but we do want to have overlap. So like if you have put your people in, go ahead and do like we would once we roll out. So you would still request your match the old way, and then we would still want you to exit your person from the unit so that you get in the habit of doing that, if that makes sense. So I do not see any more questions. These are all good questions. I can add a couple of them to the FAQ. Then we have, like I said, we have the webinar next week, which if you're on this webinar, it will likely be very similar. And then we have the open discussion toward the end, like I think I said, the 17th. And then the other dates are January 6th and January 13th. And then I think I said February, it's like mid to early February for kind of a refresher. So at every step of the way, we definitely want your feedback. We really value that, and obviously it informs how we move forward with this. And we hope, because the matching piece is such a manual process, when our matching team looks at the list and everything, we're really, the goal is to make this more fair and more automated, and we'll be able to kind of scan automatically all of these people that need a unit and all of the units that are available, so that we can do that matching piece of it more automated. Like I said, we're always going to need a human being there to make a match and to send the emails and whatnot, but hopefully this will end up creating a more fair process for how people are matched and referred. So we appreciate PSH providers taking this on as the first cohort. It will I'm sure we'll have some hurdles to work through, but I think we'll do pretty good. So thank you all, and I will look out for your questions at acarvelandetallchicago.org, and we will talk to you soon. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. Goodbye.